Shalom and welcome to 2 Minutes of Torah. This year is entitled Daf Yomi, Yevamot, Lamed, Zayin, Amid, Aleph. The Gemara quotes a famous Mishnah in Kedushin, in Asar Yuchsin. It talks about the people that came back during the times of Ezra, in the time of the rebuilding of the second Beit HaMikdash. Here the Gemara is discussing who was allowed to marry whom. And that's how it connects to Yevamos, talking about certain cases of Yevamos, who's allowed to marry whom. So that's why this Mishnah here is quoted. But it's a fascinating quote. The Gemara writes that 10 people came up from Bavel, 10 types of people came up, and it lists the different people that came up. And it writes, Asar Yuchasin mi Bavel came from Bavel, Kohanim, Levim, Israelim. And then it gives some other people, Chalalim, the people who a Kohen married someone he wasn't supposed to marry, Geirim, Mamzerim, Netine were the Givonim who made the false contract with Yehoshua, claiming they were a foreign nation when they really weren't. And then Yehoshua made a takana, a decree against them. Shtuki is a person who we know who the mother is, we don't know who the father is. Okay, a Sufi is a person we don't know who the mother or the father is. For kulan mutarim lavol zelazen, each one can marry the other one. So the Gemara Yevamos here analyzes what does that mean? They can marry each other. Who can they marry? A mamzer can marry the other people on the list. So the Gemara goes on to analyze that. What I would just like to mention is that the group that came up from Bavel, we're not talking about the Gedolei Hador here. We're talking about a bit of a ragtag group here. It's Kohanim of Israel, and then a lot of other people who don't seem to be the leaders of their generation. They were not the ones who came up. Unfortunately, a lot of the leaders stayed behind. And the people that came up seemed to be the the Amcha, not any part of the but people who had some serious challenges. They didn't know who their identity was, their father, their mother. Mamzer, people who certainly had a very difficult background, to say the least. And yet, those are the people that came and built up the Second Commonwealth. I think it's such an important point to remember. So many times we look at the rebuilding of Am Yisrael in our generation over the last century or two, and we look at some of the people who built it up, and some of them might fit on this list over here, not exactly the Gedolei Hador and the leaders. And it seems to me that just like over 2,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago, the Second Commonwealth was built up with a bit of an interesting mixture of people, not just the leaders, but the Am and the full degree and variations of the Am. It seems to me the same thing in our generation. For some reason, it was Hashem's Ratzon that the Third Commonwealth and the Jewish sovereignty that we have today would be built up by a mix of people who are not only the Gedolei Hador, but other people from the Am as well, and even people from the Am who were not exactly on the highest of levels. And for some reason, these were the people who inspired to build up the Am, just like 2,500 years ago. And I think it's important to remember, Lo machshvotayim machshavotechem. Hashem's thoughts and our thoughts are not the same. And it could be that we would have thought, well, it would be built up by the Gedolim. No, maybe we would have thought such a way. Maybe that would be machshavotechem, but Hashem's machshavot are quite different, as they have been consistently in the previous Gulot as well. Shalom.